Howdy peeps, and welcome to the channel, or back to, or whatever. And today I thought something a little different, as we're approaching the first anniversary of my first fish tank, which is the one you're looking at, the Fluval Flex 15 gallon or 57 litre. I thought I'd run through, well, let's just say the basics of the things that you'll need if you're looking to start in the aquarium hobby. Now, it's a huge minefield. So the first thing I'll say, and if you've actually found this video on the internet, then you're doing something right anyway. Research. Research, research, research. Figure out what type of fish you'd like to keep. What's the biggest size tank that you can either fit into the available space or afford. I'll say there's no point buying something like this Fluval Flex here if you want to keep African cichlids or arowanas or something like that, because it's just not big enough. I mean, if you kept it clear and empty, you might, a goldfish, or maybe a few white clouds or something like that, but nothing more. So it's kind of a nano tank. I mean, it's on the larger side for a nano tank, but it's a nice starter size aquarium. And the reason I got it is it comes with a lot of the things that you'll need. So, assuming we know where the tank's going, and away from windows is always the best bet, and skylights and any form of sunlight coming in on it. As much as the fish look much prettier in direct sunlight, they'll only look like that for a few days before the entire tank turns green and becomes an algae farm. So ideally away from windows, away from direct sunlight, away from radiators and drafts. Now, you don't want heating directly onto the tank, because even if you've got a heater in the tank to heat the water to a preset temperature, if you sit it in front of a radiator, you're probably going to cook your fish. Now, as I say, we've got the size, where we're going to put it sorted, the type of fish we'd like to keep, whether that be freshwater, cold water and tropical. Only real difference there is whether you put the heater in or not. Or salt water, which is, I'm going to say, considerably more complex. It's not that much more complex, but I wouldn't recommend salt for a first tank. I've not gone salt yet, and I personally don't have enough knowledge about it to be able to talk about it, I feel. It's the reason I haven't done many or any sort of how-to type videos on fish keeping yet, compared to what I've done with my modelling side of the hobby, is because I don't feel like I know enough yet to be able to say those things and not cause someone a problem. All I can say I know is what works for me and what doesn't. So anyways, so what are we going to need to keep fish? Well, firstly we're going to need the glass box, the tank, and then you're going to need a filter. Now, whether that's something like comes with the Flex, where it's all kind of built in, or you buy a kit tank that's got a bunch of stuff with it, and fair enough. If it doesn't, then you're going to be looking into either internal filters, hang on the back filters, sponge filters. If you go with a sponge filter, you need an air pump, but ideally you want to run an air stone of some type in the tank as well, just to break up the surface tension, add some, I'm going to say, oxygen to the water. It's adding oxygen, nitrogen, every gas that's in the air we breathe It's adding air to the water, not oxygen, unless you run it off an oxygen bottle, which would be a bit dangerous. Definite fire hazard. An electric heater that they have a tendency to go wrong fairly, well, not regularly, but when they go wrong, they go wrong. And yeah, you don't want a cloud of pure oxygen sitting over something that's shorting out and sparking. Anyway, so we've got the tank, the filter. You're going to want lights, because let's be honest, you're going to want to see what's going on in the tank. Now, the type of light all depends on what you want in the tank. If it's just, if it's a bare bottom tank with just fish, or with just some gravel and some rock, and a little diver with the air stone coming out of the top of his helmet, or a little treasure chest, or a little castle, or just a pink unicorn in the middle. I'm not knocking those choices. I say this is one of those things where it's entirely down to personal taste. My girlfriend's daughter, for example, has a tank that is all pink with a unicorn in it, and it would give me eye strain to look at it for any period of time, but it's what she likes. So yeah, though, you know, that kind of tank, you don't need anything special with the light. And you can see this is a planted tank, and we all know plants need light. Now these are all low light plants pretty much. There's nothing in here that requires spectacularly high amounts of light anyway. And we've got Java Fern, Anubias, stem plant I've forgotten the name of, but I'm sure some bright spark who does watch this will know exactly what it is. And some corkscrew val, Vallisneria, and there was some moss in there as well, but I've got that out as time goes by. Now, if you're going to have plants, you need a slightly better light. Again, all down to budget, the size of the tank. If you've got a relatively small tank, you don't need that big a light. Light penetration varies with depth, so what is going to be really quite high light up here at the surface, if my hand's even in shot, there we go, by the time you get down to here there's a lot less light. So that's one thing to consider. The next thing is the type of substrate. Now obviously if you're going bare bottom tank, it's not given a consideration, you're not having any. But if you're going to have plants, you're going to want something the plants will be able to grow in. Now, if you go really fine sand, that will compact and the plants will struggle because their roots can't get through it. If you go with plain gravel, they'll grow in it quite happily, but you have to either put root tabs in for fertilisers or let a bit of gunk build up in the tank first. You can buy special planted substrates, which are usually a volcanic soil or a clay base, and contain all the minerals and vitamins and all whatever it is that plants need to grow. And that is what I have in two of my tanks, the big 200 litre and the little Pisto 20 litre tank I've got. That's more expensive, but again, you know, if you want real plants, if you want fake plants, it doesn't matter. Just go with what you like the look of and what works with what you want a tank to look like. And if you want a tank that looks more natural, like, I mean, nature doesn't look like this, because you know, most of these fish probably don't even come from the same continents, but yeah, this is the kind of tank I prefer, which is why mine look like this. Again, it's all down to personal preference. So once you've got your tank, your filter, your lights and your substrate, you're there. You can start. You can set it all up, put some water in it. Then you have to cycle the tank. Now there are two ways of doing that. There's a fish in or a fishless cycle. The fish in cycle is one that will get a lot of hate online. But if you're careful, it's perfectly fine. You just have to keep an eye on what's going on. The fishless, I'm not a huge fan of. Well, let's be honest, you've bought a tank to put fish in. You don't want it sitting there without fishing for a month or two, just gradually putting in some ammonia or something like that to let the bacteria build up. And I will do a video on the nitrogen cycle and cycling a tank at some point in the future. So when you get the tank, the filter light, the substrate, other things that you're going to need to have on hand. Now you can buy things which are bacterial starters. I think it's API Quick Start, and there's probably several others I just can't remember the name of. And it's just a liquid bacteria culture that you put X amount in, and then you add something that the bacteria can eat, and then they settle and populate and multiply, and that's how the tank cycles. You're also going to need a water conditioner. Now, it's one of those things where it's not so common in the UK, but it's fairly common in America apparently, for people to have wells which obviously aren't chlorinated. But if you're paying a water bill every quarter to, in my case, Anglian water, your water's chlorinated, so you need a conditioner. Like I use Sea Chem Prime, which removes the chlorine from the water. Why do that? Chlorine is highly toxic, and it's toxic to people, and it's also highly toxic for fishes as well. Chlorine is the main constituent of bleach, and bleach kills 99% of germs and bacteria and pretty much every other life form there is, so we want to avoid that at all costs. Other things: if the tank doesn't come with a lid, you want to buy a lid. I know without a lid they can look more attractive, but that leads to fish jumping out when they get spooked, which you don't want. You don't want to find your prize fish in the morning laying on the floor dead. It reduces the amount of reduces the amount of evaporation you get, and stops things falling in the tank, like cats drinking out of it or trying to catch a fish, or flies or spiders and that kind of stuff. You'll also want some kind of thermometer. Now, again, really only for marine or tropical tanks. If you go in cool water tank, then Mr. Goldfish can survive pretty much whatever temperature your house is at. So unless you're in a really hot place, you're going to be fine. If you're in a really hot place, you've got air conditioning, so you know. But try and steer clear of the sort of stick-on, they call them digital, but they're not digital. Like the badges used to be on the old Transformers, where you'd rub it to see and get it warm and to see if it was Autobot or Decepticon. I'd leave those alone and go with a good old-fashioned alcohol and glass thermometer. Will it be uber precise and tell you to the 10th of a degree exactly what your water temperature is? No, but it'll give you a close enough ballpark. I mean, this is currently reading at 76, so you know, pretty much spot on. I'm going through this list back to front. I've written everything down on a list so I don't miss anything out, and I'm just going backwards and forwards through it at the moment and forgetting where I've got to. Now, the next thing you'll need is either a water testing kit or some water testing strips. That will tell you what's going on with the water in your tank. It'll tell you if you've got ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, the hardness, the pH. Water chemistry is a complex thing, and again it's one of those things I might cover at some point in future once I feel more confident in talking about it. if anything else, it just saves you having to take the water to the local fish shop and getting them to test it. Now you can pick up, like I say, the test strips. You can get them off of Amazon. I think they're £10-12, something like that, for a pack. The test kits, the API ones, sometimes go down as low as 24-25 quid, and that'll last a long time. It's just, it will tell you then when the tank is cycled, when you can add fish safely. It'll tell you if there's something going, if there's something a bit strange happening and you can't figure it out, do the water tests, they might tell you the answer. It'll save so much grief, hassle, unwanted fish deaths. Not that we ever want fish to die, but you know, it's just one of those things that's a must have in my book. Now outside of the tank, other things that sometimes people will forget about: an extension cord, you know, a multi-adapter, so you can plug everything in, because by the time you've got lights, filter, air stone, you're looking at 3 plugs. You know, and if it's a bigger tank where you've got multiples, you can go 4 or 5. Yeah, you know how it goes. Then you're going to want a bucket that you only use for the aquarium. You don't use it for anything else, just the aquarium, because you don't want to risk getting, as I say, again, bleach or other cleaning products in there and using that, killing everything in the tank. You need some sort of form of siphon as well. You see, how do you take the water out of the tank? How do you clean the gravel? With a gravel vac, siphon. You'll also want a jug as well. Now, I mean, I use a jug to put water into the tank, specifically because I don't fancy trying to pour water directly out of a large bucket into the tank and not get it everywhere. So I use a little 2 litre plastic jug to do that. Works perfectly adequately. You're going to need a net as well. Now, as tempting as it is to go for a huge one, I wouldn't. Ideally you'd want a larger one and a smaller one. It usually means you can chase the fish with the smaller one into the larger one. But you know, these things happen. You can, so some kind of fish net, so you can catch fish if you need to. And don't forget the food. You're going to need something to feed the fish. So that's pretty much it. I'm sure there's stuff I've missed, and again, people who know more than me will put the comments down in the doobly-doo below. And there we have it. As you can see, this is a pretty healthy tank. It's a bit cloudy at the moment because they've just been fed and they went a bit nuts and stirred things up. And you might even be able to see the odd baby platy trundling about in there. And yeah. So I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen and listened to. Probably seen more than listened. And if you are looking at starting your first tank, I hope you find the video, and I hope it proves to be useful for you. Anyway, enjoy your fish keeping, whether you're a newbie, experienced, advanced, whatever. Have fun, peace out, and rock on. Bye bye.